It's a joy to gather once again and be here to go through this training. This is the second in a series. It's quarterly. We do it every quarter for ministers and to add to their ministry so that they can have an advantage wherever they are. And today we'll be speaking about attitudes, protocols, and ministerial ethics. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is attitudes. The first thing you need to understand is ministry is for adults. It's not for children. And so when I speak about attitudes, we are talking about people who are self-motivated and self-driven. That is a characteristic trait of an adult. So if you still have to be spoken to and reminded of your duties every time, you are not ready for ministry. You know, I mean, when I woke up this morning, in spite of the rain, I knew that I had to be here. You know, the rain didn't stop me. And so when somebody has to tell you and beg you and remind you and virtually, reward you for coming, then you are not ready to do well in ministry. And that is an attitude. And so I'll be driving all these things. There are people who are chronologically old, but in terms of development, they are still young. So I'm going to read a verse in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 12. It says, "For when the time has come that you ought to be teachers, you still have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and have become such as have need of milk, and not of strong meat." Hebrews chapter 5, verse 12. The author of the Hebrews is addressing a group of believers who are stagnant. It's like they've grown to a certain point, but then they are stuck. And he makes a very poignant issue. He says that the time that you ought to be teachers. So in your Christian growth, you are a child, you are being taught. But you need to transition from somebody who's being taught into becoming somebody who now teaches. So you teach people instead of you being told what to do. Your growth process allows you now to instruct other people on that which is right. So if you never grow and every time you have to be reminded and taught, then you are stuck and you are still a child because you are still using milk and not meat. So the question is, can you take meat? Or should we still breastfeed you? Wouldn't it be interesting if at this stage you came to church and we are all eating banku, and then you find me jumping on my wife's breast at this age with my teeth, and then saying that I'll drink milk. Some of you look like you like milk. You see? But every one of us should move from milk to meat. Okay, so another thing you can call this is milk to meat. That's a nice message title. Okay, so it's important for you to understand that the warning here is not to stagnate, not to be stuck, but to grow and chew meat. Despite having believers for a significant amount of time, they still require instructions in basic fundamental teachings. And here Paul is saying that you should have progressed in understanding and maturity, but you still have to be told, wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, comb your hair spiritually. Now, if you are going to spend your life like that as a pastor, always teaching people and reminding them and telling them, don't you know you must read your Bible, you must come to church early, you need to go for cell meeting, you must give your tithe. After a while, it will cause you to stagnate. And I think that the challenge there is that there's an attitude where people don't want to do well, or they don't want to grow, or they are tired. You need to be able to diagnose it and be able to prescribe a cure. And for you also as a minister, if everything you do, you have to be told, there's something fundamentally wrong with your growth. Can you learn to take initiative? Can you learn to do things by yourself? Are you ready to do things without being told? That is the sign of maturity. So this verse serves as a reminder that spiritual growth requires a change of mind and your own effort and dedication. Let me just spend a little time on this. When Jesus called his disciples, he went to look for them. And then he said, "Follow me." So the first thing, he went to them. But after, the onus was on them to follow him. So there's a shift between I am calling you to following me. Can you understand it? So the fact that you have been called makes no difference to your progress if you never transition to you following. Because one is an invitation, the other reveals your heart. You must follow. So let's say I announce that this is coming on every quarterly. And then I send you a reminder. After a while, in dealing with ministers, you don't have to beg them. In fact, it's a waste of time. Because if you don't know what to follow, you have a serious problem. You should clearly, at a certain stage, be able to decide, I want to follow. And you follow. And I'll give you practical examples of following. You see, you pursue. You ask questions. You want to find out what is next, when is next. Okay? That is why in this church, for example, we don't do announcements. Because it's a waste of time. Everybody knows what we do every week. Don't you know? Don't you know that we have Tuesday evening service? Don't you know that Wednesday cell meeting? So you find a church that spends a whole 30 minutes reminding people every week. Waste of time. You are dealing with babies who, unless you give them milk, they'll cry. So are we really growing, or we are just aging? And those are things that we are talking about when I talk about attitudes. Because if your attitude is wrong, believe you me, you won't go anywhere. Is somebody with me? So, in Galatians chapter 3, look at verse 23. And I'm just laying the foundation for attitudes before we get into it. Galatians chapter 3, verse 23, 24, and 25. And because it's quite instructive, I would like for all of us to read it together. 1, 2, go. But before faith came, we were kept under the law. Say it again. But before faith came. So there was a time when there was no faith. Can you understand that? It says, but before faith came, what was under? We were kept under the law. We were shut up unto the faith, which should afterwards be revealed. Wow. If anybody is going to be a faith person, the person must first be tutored by law. Listen carefully. Not everybody can just get up and say, I have faith. I have faith. I'm a man of faith. It's not just talk. You see faith first by a disciplined life. It says, before faith came, we were kept under the law. We were shut up unto the faith, which should afterwards be revealed. 24. Wherefore, the law was our schoolmaster to bring us into Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after faith is come, we are no longer a schoolmaster. Listen carefully. When you are a child and you are growing up, how are you taught? Do this, don't do this. Wake up, eat at this time, don't do that. That's the law. You are a human being. But because you are a child, you are trained by law. Isn't it? You are told when to wake up, you are told when to sit. You are told where to go to school, when to come back home. There's something that regulates you. Why does the law teaches you so that you can learn how to exercise faith? So the law is a schoolmaster. Huh? That teaches you and brings you to a point of faith. So when you are mature, you no longer need the law to regulate you. But now you have been trained so much that you know what to do even if nobody is telling you what to do. Can you understand that? So after a while, your father won't come and say, wake up. Because you've been trained enough, nobody will come and tell you, brush your teeth. Because you were groomed enough, now you know that when I wake up in the morning, go and have your bath, brush your teeth, lay your bed, go to school. So the person who exercises faith is somebody who is not controlled by law and regulated by another person. Can you understand that? Good. So you can see a people of faith just by watching what they do, understanding the times, and doing what is right. It is not the title you have. It is not what school you have. Faith is basically a maturity thing where the schoolmaster has now brought you to faith. You can now take initiative. You can do things by yourself. Is somebody hearing me? So when you start, for example, bluffing, I won't do it again. Unless they come and beg me, I won't do it. You see, you've moved out of faith back under the law. And believe you me, God doesn't deal with children. God deals with matured people, adults. So there are a lot of attitudes in ministry that have nothing to do with ministry. That are children parading as ministers who have no business in ministry. So you need to understand this background. Don't get offended in a meeting like this because it's just meant to expose us and help us become better people. Is somebody with me? So I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. I have to work on myself and become a better person. No rich man works for another person. They own their own business. Nobody is paid to be rich. Rich people own their own business. You know why? Because the level of maturity it takes to run your own business is different from working for somebody and getting a salary at the end of the month. And in God's principle, till you can start doing things by yourself, for yourself, and for God, you go on outreach because you know it. You win souls because you know it. You pray because you know it. You fast because you know it. Not under a church program. Can you understand that? So as long as those attitudes are there, I'll come late. If you don't tell me, if there's no outreach, I won't go on outreach. If there's no prayer, I won't pray. If nobody asks me, I won't pray. And there are many pastors who don't pray. They don't study the word. In fact, many people only pray and study the word if they have to stand behind a pulpit. That's the only time they'll pray and study. So you think about it. Where's your personal Christian growth? Where's your maturity? So outside, you are known as a minister, but you are very weak. Very, very weak. And that is the malaise we face. That is the challenge with too many people behind the pulpit. No depth, bad attitudes, or misplaced attitudes. Because they won't do anything if they are. So the day he's not leading a meeting, he stands at the back. He's aloof. He doesn't read the Bible. Because he doesn't human approval. Who are you? And this is what we are going to be talking about today. You know yourself. You know who you are. So you work on yourself with God. I remember when I was growing up as a young Christian, we used to go for prayer meetings, and sometimes you see people who are standing by the wall, they are sleeping, or they are not praying. Then all of a sudden, They see pastor coming. All of a sudden, hey, la, ba, 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 hey, ya, ba, ba. And you can tell that this is just pretense. Don't you know yourself when you are praying and you're not praying? You see, why are you trying to keep up appearances? So, I learned a lot of things myself. Never be fake. If you want real, genuine faith, you've got to grow up. You've got to do what? Grow up. How do you grow up? Attitudes. Attitudes. And that is, again, what we are talking about. So attitudes are a combination of emotions, beliefs, and values that influence your behavior and your interactions with other people. Attitudes are combinations of emotions, your emotions, how you feel, your beliefs, what you really believe, and your values, what is valuable to you. That will influence your behavior and interactions with other people. So when you find somebody's behaving in a certain way, he's actually revealing to you a lot more than just the act. He's showing you the things he values. He's showing you his emotions, and he's showing you his values. So don't. When you look at somebody, just watch the way the person behaves. You can immediately tell what the person values. You can immediately tell what the person believes. You can immediately tell what the person's emotions inside he feels like. That is attitude. So what you see on the outside, somebody comes in, he's sitting down in a certain way. Or he comes into a church service, he's sitting down, he's crying, or he puts his head down. He doesn't pay attention. You see, you are actually revealing a lot about yourself. You may argue about it, but that's it. So a pastor needs to be able to diagnose people. Huh? Just watch people, how they come, how they sit, how they talk. You can tell a lot. You can tell a lot about people by their actions, their behavior. Isn't it? Good. Okay, if you are comfortable there, you sit. We'll talk about it later. Okay. So, when we speak about attitudes, how do you feel? What do you believe in? You know, people treat, I'm black. Because I'm black, this is how I behave. This is how I think. This is how I feel. So you find people who maybe think they are inferior, behaving a certain way. They have certain attitudes. You find people who have values. You see, your value will drive your behavior. How do you spend money? It's based on what you value. So let me give you a very practical example. A few years ago, Ghana went to the World Cup. And we had a major doomsday problem in Ghana. And they managed to fly $100 million to, is it Brazil? To Brazil. To where? Brazil. Okay. It was 100 million. 3.5. 3 million. We'll talk about the figure. So they sent the money when we were in the midst of a crisis. And they sent it all the way to Brazil to go and pay the players. And we had a major doomsday problem. Then I asked myself a simple question. If Britain had to make the same decision, there was a major problem of doomsday in UK, and their footballers had gone out to play World Cup, what would be the priority? Because the things you value will determine what you do. So let's bring it to ministry. You see, you can't hide ministry. You can say, oh, I love God, but the things you value will drive you. So you can pretend when you take the microphone, you are the way you're singing, you're lifting up your hands and crying. You see, but the things you value will determine what you do when you have to make a choice. As for saying, everybody can talk. There's nobody, if you ask, do you love God? He'll say no. But when you have to make a choice between your wife and your girlfriend, that is what your values determine. When you have to fast, do you value it? When you have to give, do you value it? Because what you value, you will sell everything to buy it. When I was in a relationship with my wife, don't tell anybody, I used to walk from Legon to come and visit her at Laboni. Can you imagine? I valued the relationship. I never got tired. I didn't give excuses. It was a value. So when you value something, the way you walk, the way you work, what you think about, it's a natural outflow of value. So when we speak about values, you see, it reflects in your emotions. I can wear all night. When you wear value. Value. For meeting. Values. Because people walk in the rain to go and watch EPL 3 hours because they value it. They save money and buy a ticket all season. Why? They value it. So ministry is not just a job. It's a determination of things you value. Otherwise, your complaints, your excuses, the problems and the challenges you face are all a reflection of your values. So because I think kingdom, I don't struggle to give. Just like I don't struggle to give to my wife. Because I value my wife. I value my family. You see, your values will drive your behavior. Your wife is in hospital. Do you visit her? It's a value system. Is somebody with me? Okay. So attitudes are a combination of your emotions, your beliefs, and your values that influence your behavior and your interaction with others. Attitudes will play a very significant role in shaping your relationships, in the decisions you make, and in your overall well-being. Recognizing and understanding attitudes, help us to navigate social interactions, build stronger relationships, and it fosters a more positive and inclusive environment. God has great plans for all of us, but our attitudes will shape our development. God has great plans for your prosperity, your future, your ministry, but your attitude, if you are lazy, you are weak, you are giving excuses, you are always, because your attitudes will shape your development. Bad attitudes will make you retrogress. And it's in your mind, your beliefs, your values. So, this issue about attitudes, you will find out that when we open up the floor for discussion, it's a major thing to deal with life. Attitudes are an unseen force that drives your life. Okay? Let me just say two things. Your attitude is determined by the value you place on the people around you. So we are bringing it to the presence of God. So I'll deal with an example and then we'll look at what determines what you do and when you do it. Who is the most important person in your life? Every minister will say God. Isn't it? That's an answer. Okay. But who do you misbehave the most before? So if Asantini was coming here and it was raining, You see values. You see attitudes. What time will you get here? And forgive me, I'm speaking to ministers, so just allow me. Because what you value will determine, you see, as the head is, or as the shepherd is, so will the sheep be. What drives you? I have a meeting with the most important person in my life. I have the meeting at Jubilee House. White House has called me. It's snowing, but I'll be there. So you see, the value you place on people around you determines how you be. So at a certain point, you can't lie. Is God that important to you? What price would you pay? Is a church service that important? Is coming to the presence of God that important? I wake up Sunday morning by 4:30. We are here. 4:30 a.m. First service, second service, third service. When I come, some of the ushers are here. And they are not paid to be ushers. What drives you? Some people wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. when we are driving on the streets, they are going for work. If you ask them to go to work at 4 a.m., they won't go. So the value you place on what you do will determine how well you do it. So if I'm singing for God, I'm worshiping for God. Listen, I cannot come shabbily dressed, unprepared, come and take a mic and today my voice is not good, help me sing. What kind of rubbish? What kind of attitude is that? Would you do that before the king? Would you do that before American Got Talent? You see, so it's the value. If you think that it's nothing, you just leave a song and you are off key. You didn't rehearse, you come and sit down and play. Because the way people see God, believe you me, it will drive what they do. So many people with their mouth, oh yeah, but their attitudes, you see, their beliefs, oh, I have a meeting somewhere, so I have to go. I have a meeting with God and I have a meeting with a man. Believe you me, I will pay a price if a man does not love me more than his father or his mother. And these are the things that make God begin to then favor you. You don't just pray for it. You see, you have earned it. Favor is earned. So if you have a minister, always goes to church late. He's aloof. He sits at the back. He's not interested in the service. During the service, he picks a phone call. He walks out. He goes to take the phone call, come back. You see, nobody, I told you, ministry is for adults. Nobody can mark you. But believe you me, this God, this faithful God, who sees the heart and who deals with man after the heart, is what makes the difference. So sometimes talented people are bypassed for people who are prepared to learn and humble themselves before God. Is somebody with me? Okay, so attitudes are a key part of your development. The second thing is the reward you expect from your performance will determine your attitude. When we were young, there was a man called Blemeza. And every year, Aka Blemeza will organize a party. And Blemeza was supposed to be quite rich. So he will organize a party. And then you see elderly men and women attend the party. And then at a certain point, he will get up and hold money. And then it's like once he gets up, people know that, Charlie, it's time to dance. Because the guy is come to spray money. And when he gets near you, you find old men who now are gyrating and dancing hard because they want to catch his eye. And when they begin to dance and twist their bodies and everything, then Blemeza will drop the money on them. So you find out that because when I'm passing by, they don't dance. Because they don't expect a reward from me. But when Blemeza is passing by, because he holds the money, they know that, Charlie, I need to impress this guy because, Charlie, he will drop some money. So you find people who come into the presence of God. Do you really believe that God is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him? So you come to church, you are sleeping. You come to church, you are aloof. You come to church, you don't write notes. You come to church, you are... So you go to many churches that are broke. that are poor, you find a lot of these attitudes and habits. And these ones are not demonical. You can't cast them out. Attitudes are not demons. You can't cast them out. You can't pray against it. So there must be a total overhauling of the system where we begin to change and adopt right attitudes. The first thing that signifies a change is the change in attitudes. The people must change before their world will change. That is why God came to save mankind. He didn't come to repair the earth. Hello? So it's important for all of us to understand. You must always be conscious of God's presence and place a high premium on the value of your ministry. You as a minister, if you are in the choir, you are in the ashes, you are in the prayer warriors, you see, it's not just a position of leadership. The value you place on looking after the few sheep will determine whether you'll be promoted into the palace. So there's nobody watching you as you prepare. There's nobody monitoring you as you come to church. There's nobody asking you to do voice training. There's nobody watching you as you sweep. But you have the attitude. The values drive you. This is precious. And I'm doing it for God. Whatever you do it heartily as unto the Lord. I'm going on outreach. The pastor is not paying me. Nobody is calling me. But I've grown. I know that, Charlie, this is for God. I put my best foot forward. I'm cleaning the toilets. This is for God. And there are a lot of things sometimes I talk to God about and ask him very rhetorical questions. I ask myself, God, if you wanted to appoint people around you to work in your kingdom before you, who are the people you appoint? Would you appoint mediocre people? Would you appoint people with degrees? Or will you appoint the people with a spirit of excellence? Because you can't be a king and appoint wrong people around you. They will destroy your kingship. So many of us who say, we work for God, we work for God. You see, ask yourself seriously. Are you the person God would choose? With that attitude, coming late, doing shoddy work, misquoting, doing things, throwing things about, speaking badly, dressing badly, shabbily. Forgive me. Like I said, please, I'm talking to pastors. Are you angry? Don't be angry. I beg you. So if God is going to choose, there are 20 people, and God is going to choose somebody to come and stand before him as a cupbearer, would he choose me just because my name is Bernard? Or would he choose me because I offer an excellent sacrifice? The Bible says this Daniel was preferred above all the satraps. So when I stand, I want people to look and say that this guy is not favoritism, it's not nepotism, it's not anointing. The guy is excellent. The guy is well behaved. The guy knows how to enter into the courts. The guy knows how to speak. He doesn't have to shout. He doesn't have to get angry. He can behave. So God is proud and says, Bernard, come and sweep my floor in heaven for me. Because God will choose the best sweeper. Not just because you are the head of ashes. And what will drive you is your attitude. I don't want to talk a lot about it, but I can give you the example of somebody like Daniel. I can give you the example of Joseph. You've been sold into slavery. If you are sold into slavery, you should be angry. You should be bitter. If you are Daniel, you are plugged away from your family. You should have an excess baggage of anger and bitterness and pain. But Daniel enters into the palace. You see, he realized that actually there's something bigger than my attitude. If my attitude is wrong, I'll be frozen. And after all, my brother sold me. Is it my kingdom? Why should I work? So sometimes you carry pain, but pain doesn't progress you. You see, the voice of your pain is not a reason for a bad attitude. So I'm angry, but I must work. Am I also happy as a pastor? There are times I get here and I'm angry with all the congregation members. They are not giving tithe. I don't have bills to pay. There are things that are irritating me. But I have to preach. I can't let my anger and frustrations be what I talked that day. I still have to check word. So when people use their emotions, you see, negative emotions into what they do, they destroy their own potential. So Daniel enters into the palace. He puts aside his negativities. Esther is an amazing woman. Esther could have decided that, actually, let me just settle and be. If Esther had married one of the slaves, she would have been a slave forever. If Esther had made a mistake, the future was there, but the decision she had to make. So some of the potential is cut by a bad attitude. After all, I'm married. You see? And then you freeze everything God has for you because you made a bad choice and a bad decision. Who hasn't been angry before? Who has woes? Who has sorrows? Okay, we'll talk about that. So it's important. Let me just give you a story. A certain young man called Alex, who has been in a company for several years and got in a job, went to school, been employed, selected amongst many people. So he gets a job. However, after getting the job, he develops a bad attitude. He's always complaining about the work. He's always complaining about his colleagues and management. And he feels he's underappreciated and believes that it's others who are doing him. So he starts showing very negative attitudes. He now comes late. He doesn't deliver on time. And his work is shoddy. His colleagues start avoiding him. And his supervisor struggles to give him a feedback. So after a while, he becomes isolated and disconnected from the team. And he misses out on opportunities for growth and development. There's a promotion, Isaac is bypassed. There's a traveling abroad for a trip, he's bypassed. Not because he's a bad person. What has stopped him is just his attitude. It's not demons. You see, a lot of the prayer we pray should rather be working on attitudes. One of the major challenges I've had in Choco is attitudes. A major characteristic of poverty is attitudes. You can't cast out poverty. You can't cast out poverty. And poor people always blame me. And boss small Sunday. I mean, do you know how many people? Just go and find Joseph under Potiphar. Find Daniel under Nebuchadnezzar. Hostile environments. Yet, a good attitude changes the future. Good habits change the future. So, what we are doing today, we don't like it. You are working under a boss you don't like. But you see, promotion doesn't come from your boss. So it's important you understand your own attitudes, and I'll talk about that, and what you have to deal with to get into the future. So Alexis' supervisor called him and explained his poor attitude and performance and how it was impacting the team. She offered support and resources to help him improve. But Alex refused, convinced that everyone else was the problem. As a result, Alex faced severe consequences. He was passed over for promotion. His colleague began to question his commitment and reliability, and eventually he lost his job due to persistent poor performance and attitude. Alex's story illustrates the danger of poor attitudes and their consequences. His refusal to adapt and grow led to missed opportunities and ultimately job loss. If God had to continue employing you, these are hard questions. Would you still be employed? So you see, you can start well, but after a while, God knows that this guy, boy, you see, my presence is very casual. He comes late. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't fellowship with me. He doesn't study. Now he's bigger than me. In fact, God has to address him as pastor. Can you imagine? When we call him, oh, God, Jesus Christ. But you, if God doesn't call you Pastor Bernard, Bishop Bernard, when the church is praying for you, they must say, we are praying for Bishop Bernard. In the name of Jesus Christ. You see, you call him Jesus, but you call your pastor, you are bigger than him. He can't even talk to you. He can't tell you when to come early. So he employed you, but will you lose your job? So it's not about the fact that you're not called, but will you grow with him? Because the danger is that now men have replaced God in your life. And you see yourself bigger than the rules and regulations. So when you come late, nobody can talk to you. When you don't pray, nobody can advise you. When you don't give offering, nobody can tell you. Because now you talk to people. You see, and you miss out a very important point, that you are appointed by God as a steward of his resources. And it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Look at another man called David, who is a sales representative, new to a company. He's assigned to a very tough sales territory. And his colleagues warned him, laughing at him, that it would be challenging to meet his targets. However, David chose to maintain a positive attitude, focusing on the opportunities rather than the obstacles. David's great attitude led to remarkable results. He spent extra hours researching his clients' need, building relationships with them. He collaborated with his colleagues, learning from them, seeking advice, and sharing his own insights. He still remained optimistic and resilient, even in the face of rejection and ridicule. As a result, David achieves outstanding results. He exceeds his sales targets within the first 6 months. He builds a new loyal client base and customers, praising his dedication and expertise. And very soon, he's promoted as a senior sales executive. David's story also illustrates great attitudes. David's story reminds us that our attitudes have the power to shape our experiences, relationships, and outcomes. By choosing to maintain a positive and great attitude, we can overcome challenges, achieve success, and inspire others. Let me give you an example of a student who perseveres through very difficult courses and hardships of not even having food and struggling to pay school fees, and yet he earns top grades. What does he have? A solid attitude. I will win. I will survive. I will make it. You see, there is something within you that must rise up and tell yourself, I will succeed in Choco. I will do well in ministry. I will break through. The world has negative things against you, but you must rise up with a greater one in you and say that nothing will keep me down. Nothing. When there's pressure, what you need is greater attitudes. Look at an athlete who overcomes injuries and achieves a personal best. He goes through a lot of things. He achieves a lot of injuries, yet he doesn't give up. And many great sportsmen have gone through major injuries, but they've survived. They didn't give up. So an attitude of, I won't give up. I won't give up. I will keep training. Look at an entrepreneur who turns a failed business into a successful venture. You start, you dig a well, the Philistines stop it. You dig another well, stop it. You dig another well, they stop it. You don't give up. Why? Because you have an attitude of perseverance. So I'm going to just end with this verse so that we end the first session. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19. And this is the crux of what I'm sharing about attitudes. And I want us to see something about the mindset and the attitude of Paul. For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain them all. Can we all read it together, please? 1 to go. For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant. Look at Paul's mindset, Paul's attitude. He says, I am free from all men. Nobody owes me. Nobody controls me. Nobody guides me. Nobody's telling me what to do. I'm free. I'm not a slave. Because Paul lived as a Jew in Roman Empire. And the Jews were under Roman subjugation. But Paul says, no. I'm a bona fide Jew and I'm also a Roman. I'm free. Nobody needs to tell me what to do. Nobody controls me. Nobody regulates my life. I'm unrestrained. I am free. Nobody has to force me. The word I am free is actually showing who I am now. I'm an adult. Nobody can tell me when to wake up. I'm unrestrained. Nobody gives me food. I'm unrestricted. And I'm not bound by obligations to others. My parents can't talk to me. Nobody can advise me. Nobody can tell me what to do. I wake up when I want to wake up. I can decide myself. Wow. So if you are free like that, what do you do with your freedom? Because there are people who are free, yet they don't know how to manage the freedom. The freedom has made them rather reckless. But the first thing you are going to learn to do is that as an adult, nobody's going to mark you. In this church, some of my pastors are not here. But I tell Pastor Oscar and Pastor Ebo, once you're a pastor in this church, believe you me, I will not regulate you. In fact, I don't even preach in my own churches. So I tell them, if you are big enough to be a pastor, you must be sensible enough to regulate yourself. So you know how to behave. You know what to do. You know what is right. If you appoint a pastor that you have to micromanage, you have a big problem. You have a big problem. Because if the pastors are being micromanaged, what would you do to the choir members and the ashes? So if you grab that's why it's important the way you graduate to become a pastor. Because the discipline, you don't just wake up and call yourself a pastor because you can sing, you can dance. The discipline you must go through to become a pastor, the discipline you go through from a factory worker to become a managing director. Nobody has going to tell the managing director that you must submit your report at this time, you must go to work early, you must do you are free. No, nobody controls you. Nobody tells you what to do. So you have freedom. Paul says, I am free. I am free. So all of you here, everybody is free. In fact, if I try to advise you, if you are not careful, it will become a quarrel. So at a certain stage, it's difficult to even advise your peers. Are you the pastor of my church? Who are you to talk to me? Pastor, do you know what I go through? You are free. So every one of you, we are standing in a position where we are free, and the freedom comes at a price because nobody is going to advise you. Nobody is going to talk to you. If I don't pray, if I don't come early, no church member can come and tell me, Pastor, today why are you late in church? Pastor, I'm going to buy some more. But nobody says that. You are free. I'm free to sleep in the night. I'm free to come for all nights. I'm free not to come. I'm free to give offering. I'm free not to give. I'm free to go on outreach. I'm free not to go. So you find a lot. When was the last time? You are free. You are free. Nobody can tell you go on outreach. Nobody can tell you have an all night. Nobody can tell you fast. Paul says, I'm free. Yet, oh God. Yet have I made myself. So he says, I am. Look at it. There's a position that says, I am. Then he says, I have made myself. So you are, but you can make yourself with your freedom. Or you can unmake yourself with your freedom. So for example, if I choose to visit girls late in the night, I'm free. No church member will come and tell me, Pastor, I want to get you. Nobody. And you see, there are many of us. I'm sure when Pastor Ansa comes, he'll talk about accountability. Because where you stand, nobody can talk about things that people normally talk about. I am free, yet have I made myself. So I am poor. That's what life handed over to me. Yet have I made myself. You see, there's a part where life hands over to you, but there's a part where you make yourself. I'm in Choco, yet I am not of Choco. I have made myself. I'm a slave, yet I've made myself. I was born poor. I didn't go to school, but I didn't stay that way. I have made myself. And you see, some of you must start learning how to speak English. Forgive me. Forgive me. And again, I'm smiling, so be nice to me. Oh, yeah. Because if you want to go places, you got to master the English language. You can't have an excuse and saying that your father didn't take you to school, yet in 3 years you can get a degree. But you always, I am free. In Papa for me, acquire me. Yes, you are in that position. I'm acquire me. You've been blaming everybody, and you are still standing there. You can make yourself. You see, what drives me to work is I want to make myself. He didn't say the people will make you. He didn't say the government will make you. He says, yet have I made myself. So there's what life gives to you. You were born to poor parents. So what? Yet have I made myself. I study, I go to school, I learn, I bend the midnight oil, I memorize the Bible, I'm reading books. I make myself. So there's a part of your ministry, you must have an attitude of learning. So I said, you want to be the chief usher. When was the last time you read a book about ushering? You want to be a pastor. How many books have you read? Because the knowledge for starting a church, believe you me, is different from a knowledge for growing a church. The knowledge for entering into a relationship is very different from the knowledge from maintaining a relationship. So the fact that you are good today does not mean you'll be good tomorrow. That is why a course like this is important. Because I keep refreshing myself. I keep adding to the store of my knowledge. I keep learning new things. Every week, ask myself, what new thing have I learned? I can't be preaching the way I was preaching 5 years ago. No depth, no substance, no new revelations. My presentation skills are the same. I make myself. I make myself. You've been singing the same old songs. I don't know if I told you, I've banned my choir from singing any other person's songs. So now my choir will only sing the songs they have written. They must make themselves. Every day come and say, yeah, Joyce Blessing, and you are dancing. Why? Joyce Blessing, if she didn't make herself, look at where she came from. She was born in a village, she's made herself. What's that lady's name? Efunube. She's made herself. Shatawale, they've made themselves. They were born, I am, yet have I made myself. And it comes with a lot of effort. So your personal effort, your personal attitudes, your value systems, your belief systems, your emotions are now coming to play. You see, I can teach you a song, but I can't teach you the stagecraft. So every time you're singing the song, you sing well, but you stand, you are boring. Your dressing is not good. You see, you've learned the song. It was given to you. Yet you make yourself. You learn the dance. You learn the smile. You learn how to, get the dynamics involved. So God gave you the talent, but you must make it fruit. I'm no longer impressed by people who sing other people's songs. Don't tell me you're a good singer if all you do is sing other people's songs. You are not good. You are not good. You can start like that. You can start with it. But don't stay in that. Pentecost, they are always releasing songs. Shatawale is releasing a song every year. Medical, releasing a song everywhere. You, spiritual, speaking in tongues. You are waiting for them to release a song to copy. Hey. But you must have an attitude. I can write songs. I'm going to work at it. So something must drive you. He says, I am free, yet I have made myself. And look at what he says. I've made myself servant. You see, which is very interesting. Who I am is what life gave to me naturally. I didn't choose my background. I didn't choose my gender. I didn't choose my location. What I have become is a result of my effort. What I've made myself. It says, I made myself a servant. Charlie. I am free to sleep anytime. I'm free to wake up anytime. I'm free to come to church anytime. Yet I have made myself a servant. So I'm free. I'm a lawyer. I'm a banker. Charlie, I'm also a senior pastor. Nobody can tell me what to do. Yet I have made myself a servant unto all. Very important. I must choose whose slave I become. I've made myself a servant unto learning. I've made myself a servant unto discipline. I've made myself a servant to wake up at a certain time. I'm under somebody, something, that by this time I should be up. By this time I should be praying. By this time I should be in church. The boxers and the footballers, 4 a.m., servants. The weather doesn't stop them. I've watched a few of them. Bukum Bankum and Ambitious Tilapia. I've watched a few of them. I've watched Usain Bolt. I've watched Cristiano Ronaldo. I've watched Shatawale stay in the studio from 3 days. They are there. Abodam, what are their names? All those people. Stone Boy. My wife likes Stone Boy. Kwade. You see, I look at these people not because of what they do, but I look at their struggles. Because what life handed over to them, they should never have succeeded. But they made themselves. How? Because they became servants and disciplines of a certain profession. Can you make a servant to the choir? A servant to singing? A servant to Christ? That without regulation, I'll be there. And the sad part is to see people who stay longer and become funnier. Funny is not a good word. They become more casual. So when they were students, they were coming to church, they were going on outreach, they were praying, they boasted, Charlie, come to his crusade, and this, they'll go on outreach, go on missions. Then they grow. Paul says, I'm still Paulo. Nobody is teaching me the word, yet I've made myself a servant. You see, Paul is like a preacher who is now preparing to preach as if he's never preached before. He's Paul. And I can give you examples of some men of God. When I sit with them and I see how they are learning, I'm like, what? I thought these guys, by now, they know everything. They shouldn't be learning. But in the midst of the fact that in their greatness, when nobody can tell them what to read, they are still searching the scriptures. You as a cell leader, you stop searching the scriptures. As a worship leader, you don't know any verses again. The pastor, you haven't learned any verse. And when they ask you to go and preach, you look for some old notes and go and say something and say anointing. What thing? I've made myself servant. I search the scriptures. I buy books. I attend courses. I am searching, reading, going to Bible school. Because the knowledge you need as a church, today we are 28, 29 years. The knowledge to start the church is very different from the knowledge to run the church now. The skills you need, very different. Otherwise, you start infighting because you are not growing. So when other people come into the church and they are shining, you are angry. So you transfer them. You fight with them. You don't want anybody else to lead praise and worship because it's your position. You don't want anybody to preach because they're clapping for him and people are giving money. Why? Because you're not growing. I've made myself a servant. So the more spiritual you are and the bigger you are, you see, the chief executive is now working as if he was just employed. This morning we're coming in the rain and we saw a woman in this church we know very well, and we were amazed. In the rain, she was opening her shop and she was alone. It was dark, but she was there. And Master and I said, Charlie, when somebody owns a shop, it's different from when somebody employs people to work in a shop. The rain, torrential rain, yet she's opening her shop. And she's alone. None of the workers were there. Because somebody who wants profit and wants to make money is different from somebody who gets a job. So long before I became a senior pastor, you see, my punctuality, my credentials, my search of the scriptures. That's why I don't need a title to show who I am. I don't need you to call me a big title to say, Charlie, the guy is senior. I don't need it. A carpenter doesn't have a title, senior carpenter. He will work. When you go to P-Wood, the furniture would stop for them. Jesus said, if you don't believe in me, let my work speak. It's important you understand, became a servant. Everybody's a slave to something. Choose to be a slave to Christ. Choose to be a slave to learning. Choose to be a slave to wisdom and faith. No matter what happens, that will be your choice. Paul is an educated professor who has submitted himself to learning as if he knows nothing. And Lionel Messi is at the top of his game, yet he's training as if he's now playing a Justify Your Inclusion. A top executive, he's been made CEO, yet he's obeying all the rules and setting the examples of hard work as if he had just been employed. I am free and I am boss. Nobody can tell me, yet I've made myself a servant. Are you with me? So beyond your position, your attitude, your servant. You see, when Jesus says anybody wants to be great amongst you, let him be your servant. He's talking about these attitudes. That don't let it go. Still be the first at your cell meetings. Still be the first at fasting. Still pray fervently as if you are now learning how to pray. Set the scriptures every day as if your life depends on it. Praise and worship. Lift up your hands. Kneel down. Be passionate. Don't just come and perform. So you are the singer, so you don't come to church. Then let's welcome the singers to come. Then you come from the back. Go. Then you can take the mic and you are wearing some skimpy dress. Then I said, forgive me. Are you forgiving me? Okay. Yeah, okay. You see? But you learn. You grow. Not before men, but before God. My attitude is to be like Jesus Christ. So in Philippians chapter 3, Paul says, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but there's one thing I do. In Kola Kenshe. In Sheku. Every time I have to preach, my wife will tell you how many tense moments I have. The searching of the scriptures, the sleepless nights, making sure I get new, fresh messages. I don't say, I preached this message last year, so let me go for my notes. No. Every time I have to come and stand here. Saturday nights, many times we don't even sleep. Saturdays, I don't go for funerals, I don't go for weddings, I don't go out. Spend the whole day in bed. Sometimes my children don't see me from Friday to Sunday when they come to church. If you invite me for a wedding, I won't come. Funeral, I won't come. Because you go for a funeral, you can decide that Sunday you won't come to church. But I can't come and stand and say, Pastor, when I say we say, no. Because I have to receive fresh from God to be able to present it the way, without offense, without insults, and edify with the right appropriate language. So as I mature, I script everything. I don't just come and say, then when I forget something, then I start insulting the church members. No, I script it. So I don't say things that are offensive to the government or offensive to a culture or offensive to people. It's important. The attitude of becoming better. What you believe about yourself and the value you place on it. I don't have any restrictions, but I'm doing it as an adult. As an adult, choose who you serve. Nobody's marking you now. Nobody's advising you. Mark your own paper as an adult. I want to be a slave to excellence, to integrity, to honor, to learning, so that I can do well. And the last part, it says that I am become all things that I might win some, or I might win, or I might gain them more. So Paul says, I have made myself. The end result is so I might win. You see, you need to have a winning mentality. There are many people who have a walking through mentality. In your preach, in your la. But you don't have a winning mentality. Why do you do what you want? Why do you study so hard? Why do you pray so hard? Why are you in ministry? Why are you pushing yourself to attend conferences? Because you have a winning mentality. I want to win this life. So Paul says, I want to win. A child, so my parents were poor. I was born in a poor environment. I live in a choco environment where everybody is going under. No, but I want to win. You see, if you don't have a winning mindset, it will be as if what life has given to you is your last. And sometimes when I read success stories, and I like reading a lot of those things, and I see people and I hear their stories, and I look at where they came from, I find out that all of them has a winning mentality. It makes a difference. I'm not just preaching for show. Why do I save? Why do I work so hard? Why do I choose my friends carefully? Why do I not behave recklessly? It's a winning mentality. Why do I sit down to learn? Why do I attend courses? Why do I pay school fees and get new degrees? Because it's a winning mentality. Why do I bend the midnight oil when others are sleeping? And tomorrow we preach on self-motivation, because this is what I'm going to be teaching. Because if you can't motivate yourself, you see, something from inside must motivate you to wake up, to go for the prayer meeting, to learn harder. If you don't have self-motivation, nothing from outside can motivate you. That is why no IMF loan will develop Ghana. No help from billions have been put. It will never. We will corrupt and chop it. Because help that you don't want yourself, you will never get. Pastor, share me. Do you know how many people don't have a salary that they work? Do you know how many people do things for free just to get a good name and get favor? I was reading the story of a young man who wanted to start a shop. He didn't have any money, so he would go and sleep in front of a lady's shop, and early in the morning wake up, sweep the place. He wasn't employed, but the lady would come and see the lady, carry this, put this somewhere. Gradually, he started earning money. It took 4 years for the lady to eventually look at the boy and say, okay, let me give you a chance. So he gave the guy some chance and said, I'll give you a small goods, go and sell it and bring it. Then the guy will go and sell it, make some money, bring it diligently, faithfully. There's no overnight miracle. If you are looking for overnight growth, you don't know God. He's a God of process. So you must have the mindset, the mentality. Strong. I will survive. I will win. I will win the race over poverty. I will win in Choco. I will win in Ghana. I will win in the world. I will win in the future. I will win in my old age. I will win in my marriage. That I might win. That I might win. And I'm not working for a human being. I might win. This is the success story of a Daniel, of a Joseph, of an Esther in a strange and foreign land where they had no relatives, where nobody liked them, where they were sent as slaves. Life gave them slavery, but they made it themselves. And that's what we talk about, attitudes. So I end with this attitude. Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. That's Ziegler. A positive attitude will cause a chain reaction of positive thoughts, events, and outcomes. It is a catalyst and it sparks extraordinary results. Just by having a positive, I can do it. I can do it. I will do it. I'll try. I'll do it for you. I will win. You see, all of a sudden it sparks a catalyst of events. Attitude is everything. If you have a good attitude, you will make the most of every situation. A good attitude. And then finally, Oprah Winfrey. The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change their future by merely changing their attitudes. You can change your future just by changing your attitudes. So attitudes, isn't it? So the first thing we need to work on are attitudes. Do you have a lazy attitude? Do you have a complaining attitude? Do you have an angry? You get angry. You are just showing your emotions, your values, and your belief systems. Do you feel inferior? Do you want to show off? Analyze your attitudes. The first thing Jesus taught in the Bible was about attitudes. Be attitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst of righteousness. Blessed are those who mourn. Those are attitudes. So if you change your attitude, you enter into blessing. Somebody will show you favor. Somebody will help you. Somebody will walk with you. Somebody will recommend you.